Hello and welcome to the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery's Mystery Tour this Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Kate and I work at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery, and I'm joined here today with Scott Carlin, who's the manager of House Museums. Before I go any further, I would just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and pay respect to the Tasmanian Aboriginal community, the First Nations community of Lutruwita, Tasmania, this island, as the traditional owners and continued custodians of this land. We are here on Muwinina land. So Scott, here we are in the garden of Markree on this lovely winter's day. It's lovely to be outside. We're here at Markree, which is part of the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery portfolio, and a lot of people don't know that the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery has other places to visit. So we're just off Davey Street. For those of you that know Hobart, Veronica's just showing you a map, and the wind just blew the map. We're just off Davey Street, sort of heading south out of Hobart, down a street, Hampton Road, thank you. And this is open to the public, but we'll talk about that later at certain times of the year. So Scott, can you tell us a little bit about your role here at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery, and of course about this wonderful place called Markree?
Well, I look after 3 historic houses and 3 off-site collections, and Markree is really quite a wonderful place. It's wonderful because the house, the collection and the garden all tell the story of how the arts and crafts movement came to Tasmania. So Markree was built in 1925-1926 along with the house next door, which is Red Knights. And the 2 houses was essentially built for 2 sisters. So Ruth Baldwin lived in this house with her husband Cecil and 1 son Henry, and her sisters, who are unmarried, lived next door. They were Hilda and Mary Manning. Manning Avenue in Sandy Bay is named after the Manning family, who came to Hobart in the 1820s as merchants. The garden here, which Kate mentioned, is a really lovely arts and crafts movement garden, and it was laid out by Cecil Baldwin. So Cecil was Ruth's husband. At the moment the garden's looking quite wintry, but it was laid out with so that there'd always be something in flower in all seasons. So at the moment we've just got some jonquils, some nerines, some iris, and a couple of stray windflowers. The garden's probably best seen in summer. The garden's arts and crafts because it's been laid out in a way that's got quite a strong structure, but as you look around, they've aimed to give the garden the feeling of informality as much as possible. So we get these lovely rockwork borders. Instead of hard cement borders, we've got lovely informal rockwork borders, and then each garden bed is really densely packed with quite a variety of plants. So this is the arts and crafts style. Cecil had been to the Burnley School of Horticulture in Melbourne, which is still going today, and at Burnley they were teaching the arts and crafts gardening style of designers such as Gertrude Jekyll. So Gertrude Jekyll was a great friend of Edwin Lutyens, and Gertrude's said to have invented the herbaceous border as we know it today. Another Australian garden designer called Edna Walling also went to Burnley, and so many people see in this garden the style that has become associated with Edna Walling, including the rockwork borders and of course her favourite plant, which was the silver birch. So we've got this lovely ancient silver birch in the middle of this garden, dating from probably from the 1920s when Cecil first laid out the garden. And of course we've got the stone walls of a century earlier. So this garden was laid out as a subdivision of a nearby house called Heathfield, a colonial period house. And the stone walls were the boundary walls of Heathfield, built by convict labour in the 1820s. And of course in the 1920s they loved the handcrafted feel of the surviving old stone walls. So that's a sense of the arts and crafts movement as you see it in this garden.
It's a beautiful wall, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So can you still see the original house from here?
Yes, you can see Heathfield.
Heathfield, yeah.
So just looking across the fountain here, you'll see Heathfield, the colonial house, just beyond the fence.
Ah, yes.
So it's a very Tasmanian story in that the old was kept because the Tasmanian economy's never been that strong. So the old was preserved and the ground simply subdivided.
Right, how interesting. So we get a good view of the house. We're on quite a slope here, so it makes the house look perhaps even taller than it is. But it's 3 floors?
3 floors,
yeah.
Yes. So you'll see, so the house is quite colonial revival looking. So we've got the very wide eaves, we've got the green painted shutters, we've got a little sort of fanlight over the dining room window there. And originally on the back of the house, the verandas weren't enclosed, so the elevation was actually quite asymmetrical. So that gave it more of an arts and crafts feel than you see today.
Indeed. And I think you said that this tree is due for a prune, so
yes.
When people are able to visit, they'll be able to see the front of the house a little bit more clearly. Yeah.
Yes, it's a beautiful viburnum.
Oh, viburnum, yeah.
It's just finished its red foliage.
It is quite a tree. It's probably time we went in and had a look inside the house before
Absolutely.
we dilly-dally any further.
Yes, this is a quick 20-minute tour today, but of course when you come to visit the house over the summer months, the tour is easily an hour. And people like to linger here. Many people have got grandparents' houses of the same sort of period, or they're renovating their own house, so it's quite unusual for them to see a 20th century house that's actually preserved as a museum.
These, the green shutters, is that the original, obviously not the original paint, but the original colour?
Yeah, the original colour.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
It's a very peaceful place, isn't it?
It is, yes. I mean, you're right in the middle of Hobart,
yes.
but it's quite an oasis. So more of a sense of the colonial revival here with the big segmental arch over the front door.
It's quite impressive, isn't it, that arch?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you get the front door and the side lights and the service door sort of tucked into this porch.
So that service door that you mentioned on the right there, is that unusual to have a service door sort of near the main front door?
Absolutely. Normally they'd keep the service and the front door very separate, but of course in this house they've aimed to use up all of the north side of the house for garden, so they've had to deal with the services some way, so they've tucked them into the front corner of the property here.
But quite practical, I suppose, as
yeah,
well.
It's very
to
practical.
do that. Yeah.
Yes, but I think Mrs. Baldwin probably had a few reservations about the deliveries coming in so close to the front door.
Right. We'd better go in past that very beautiful doorbell.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Veronica. Shut the door to keep the heat in.
Yes.
It's fairly cool in Hobart today.
Yes. So this will be a very, very brief tour, and we'll just do the downstairs today,
okay,
unfortunately. You know, so much more to see.
So much more.
So we're here in the entry hall. The entry hall sort of conjures up the sense of the stair hall in an English country house of centuries past. We've got a lovely combination of Art Nouveau, so the lines of this newel post, you know, the fact that it tapers, the fact that the capital's so soft. Art Nouveau was an organic style that came into fashion in Paris in the 1890s. And then we get the next style that follows, Art Deco. So Art Deco, you know, came into fashion in Paris in the mid-1920s. So we're seeing two different styles within the one arts and crafts house. The arts and crafts movement was really a design ethos, which was all about the handcrafted, and all sorts of different styles, you know, from Anglo-Japanese design through to American prairie style to Art Nouveau and Art Deco sort of came in under its umbrella.
No, interesting.
Yeah.
And this chair back is rather beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? So this is a hall chair, so it's just a piece of furniture for a hall that you weren't really meant to sit on, you know, a narrow, hard seat. You wouldn't spend very much time sitting on that.
No.
But of course the back of the chair is set up to as a vehicle really for carving, and this has been carved with the daffodil which is also given an Art Nouveau style. So as we go through the house, you'll see quite a lot of this wood carving by Tasmanian women artists. Ruth Baldwin, the lady of the house, was a wood carver, and the background to that movement was that an architect called Alan Cameron Walker came to Hobart in the early 1900s and set up the Arts and Crafts Society of Tasmania in 1903. That inspired similar societies through the other Australian states, and women went to evening classes and learnt wood carving, copperwork, silverwork, lace making, embroidery, all of those decorative arts, and they had annual exhibitions of the decorative arts through to about the Second World War.
I think you were saying earlier the Dispossession and Possession Gallery at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery. We've got a very interesting
Very
area,
good display, yeah. Including some silverwork by Alan Cameron Walker.
I was interested in the wood. There's a lot of wood around.
Yeah.
Is that a local wood?
Yeah, this is all Tas oak. So Tasmanian oak is a generic term for about 3 different eucalypt species. Yeah.
It's very prominent, isn't it? Particularly in this hall.
Yeah, you can see the beautiful fiddleback graining of the timber. So, yeah, it's quite a feature of the house. So, I mean, part of the arts and crafts movement is actually making a feature of the original timber work, the original joinery. So they don't paint it or veneer it to make it look like some other timber.
I'm just going
You're seeing in the background our gardener who's just arrived, and she doesn't really know the filming we're doing today. So our tour might be interrupted, but let's not worry about that for the time being. These are lovely photos showing the 2 houses as they were newly built. So Markree, where we are, is on the left, and Red Knight's, Hilda Manning's house, is on the right. And they're designed in a complementary style. They're by a Hobart architect called Bernard Ridley Walker. And Bernard Walker's best known for the cenotaph in the Hobart Domain, and also extensions to the Friends School in North Hobart where he had gone. So yeah, Bernard Walker was a Quaker. And the second photograph here shows the range of houses that were on the crest of the hill here. So we looked at Heathfield before.
Yes.
There's Markree, there's Red Knights. And this was a sort of dress circle for Hobart in the 1920s, overlooking the town.
That silver birch that you mentioned, of course, isn't, it's probably just a little sapling.
Yes, probably
photo,
is, yeah.
Scott, interestingly behind you, I was going to ask you about the name Markree, because it's quite an unusual name, and this obviously explains why it's called Markree. Yeah,
it's named Markree for Markree Castle in County Sligo, and Cecil Baldwin's father was the astronomer at, his grandfather was the astronomer at Markree Castle in the 19th century. So there were connections here to the Irish ascendancy, the Protestant Irish in Ireland, and both the Mannings and the Baldwins had that ancestry.
The connection. It's quite a grand looking place.
Yes. It's probably, you know, in the 20th century they looked to sort of grander ancestry. I don't know. This is great. This is Ruth Baldwin. So we began to talk about Ruth as the lady whose inheritance funded the house, and that's Henry Baldwin, her one son. So Ruth married Cecil in 1918 when she was approaching 40, and Henry was born the following year. Henry was associated with the house for all of his life, and then left the house to TMAG when he died in 2007.
Oh, so it was a bequest.
It was a bequest, yeah. I'd like to show you another photo.
Oh, yes, please.
This is Henry and his father. So this is while the house is being built in 1925-26. And this is Henry, aged about 6 years old, coming to see the house being built with Dad. And Henry was really so sentimentally attached to the house. And you can see why. You know, he was part of it being born in a way. So yeah, he left the house to TMAG really to commemorate his mother's family history, his mother's family association with the house, and association with Hobart. And Henry collected a lot of family heirlooms from different branches of the Manning family, which came to TMAG with Markree. A lot of those heirlooms are on display in the Bond store, which is
part of the Tasmanian Museum, yes.
Yeah, so it's part of the main campus of the museum.
Right.
And they're upstairs in the this second level
Yes.
decorative arts exhibition. So we've tended to focus on the 1920s contents of the house when you come into the house. So Henry, throughout his life, he actually added a lot of 19th century contents to what he'd received, the original 1910s and 20s furnishings that his parents had put into the house.
Shall we move on into the living room, because I can see that we're going to run out of time.
Yes.
Well, it's got a very nice feel, hasn't it, this room?
Yes, a lot of light coming in now. So this is the dining room of the house, and the furniture in the room is made by Coogan's. Coogan's was a company that was founded in Launceston in the 1870s and just went out of business this year in Hobart. Coogan's have made this furniture from Tas Oak, and it's copying some furniture catalogues that they obviously got from the Craftsman House in New York. So the Craftsman House was set up to manufacture arts and crafts furniture for the masses, and there were components of the Craftsman House, including workers' houses. There were quite a theme with the arts and crafts movement, and into the 20th century, of course, Claremont was set up as workers' housing for the Cadbury factory here. So, yeah, it's been part of the Hobart scene as well.
I'm rather interested in this beautiful frieze going around, and I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so you're seeing now part of the original 1920s wallpaper, and you can see it's been designed with a fairly plain sort of textile-looking body paper, and then a cut-out frieze put around the top of the walls. That unfortunately survived intact through to the 1990s, and Henry redecorated the house, shortly before he really got to thinking about leaving it to TMAG. So unfortunately the house has been a 1920s moment in time through to the 1990s, and then there were changes before it came to TMAG. So we've actually reproduced the design for the rest of the two rooms here, and what you see now is the 20s paper copied for the rest of the rooms. So they're part of giving the house back, a sense of how the 1920s contents related to the building.
This is interesting.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? So it's a servery. So you can see it's a bank of cupboards and drawers.
Yes.
And the sliding doors allow you to, pack the cupboard from one side and set the table from the other. And so that brings the kitchen and the dining room close to each other. So in colonial houses, of course, the kitchen would be a long way from the dining room, and you'd have an army of servants cooking the food up and then bringing it through. Of course, post-World War I, women aren't going into domestic service. That's a bit of a theme of shows like Downton Abbey, where women are not so keen to go into domestic service. There are other career opportunities for them. And at the same time, Mrs. Baldwin was stepping up, and she was quite a cook, so she liked to be providing for her family. And of course, this brought the kitchen and dining room closer together.
Very practical. That's a lovely room. So what's this room?
Through here is the sitting room. So we were talking about the arts and crafts movement in Tassie earlier, and if we go to the corner, the desk and mirror are two pieces made by Ruth Baldwin. So she was part of the arts and crafts movement.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, the desk is particularly lovely. So it's carved by Ruth. It's carved with the Tasmanian blue gum, which is the state floral emblem. And of course the blue gum's got that lovely sinuous nature to it, and of course she's added to that in an Art Nouveau sort of treatment. The mirror is by her as well. So yeah, it's a really lovely collection that
she was quite an accomplished
wasn't
she? Yeah.
She was, yeah.
It's got a wonderful three-dimensional quality to it, hasn't it, the gum leaves? Yeah.
Yes. I think it would have taken quite a bit of strength, actually. Strength with the
chisel.
Chisel to get into the timber like that.
Indeed.
It's blackwood, which is quite a hard timber to get into.
Right.
Hard timber to carve. These other pieces in the room are from other women makers, and they just illustrate the way the arts and crafts movement took hold in Tassie and the range of different design ideas that people brought to their work. This bookcase, for example, this is very much in the style of Charles Rennie Mackintosh and Margaret Mackintosh of Glasgow. So people often, people tend to know the Mackintosh style from Glasgow. Mm. And the table in the corner is really quite amazing. This is very much in the style of Louis Majorelle, who was a leading French Art Nouveau designer, and it's been carved in Tasmanian blackwood. So again, very hard timber to carve. But it's really quite amazing to see the way in which they obviously picked up the latest design catalogues and other publications and translated them into Tasmanian materials.
It flows beautifully, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
I know we're running out of time, but I'm just curious about that little door there with
the
the coal
door
scuttle. Yes.
Well, the cupboard's made to hold buckets of coal. So on a cold winter's night, you can get your coal from the coal chute and have it nice and close for when you need to top up the fireplace.
And you just pop it into that little cupboard out of the way.
Yep.
There we go. Lovely. Do you think we've got time to just quickly look at the kitchen?
Okay.
Yes? Because it's kind of interesting, the kitchen, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. And this is the other side of the servery. Yes.
Yeah. I kind of like the formica on the top there,
yes.
From the 70s.
Yeah, it all tells a story, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. You can see how Henry spent time here. And this green is just so 1930s, isn't it?
It is so 1930s. Yes, if you had to pick a colour, you would pick this, wouldn't you?
You would.
And the ceilings are interesting, aren't they? I won't start on a whole new topic, but the way they flow into the wall.
Yeah, they are, yeah. I mean, if you want to look at those, that's a very arts and crafts feature. The arts and crafts movement was all about using the artisan skills of the builders, and this is very self-effacing. It's simply illustrating that the plasterers had the ability to create these smooth transitions from wall to ceiling.
It's beautifully done. And so just to finish up, if you down here, the doorways, that takes us back round to the entrance.
It does. So you can see we're passing the pantry, and we've got a meat safe on the other side, and we're just getting to the service door. So that was that door by the front door of the house. And so deliveries could come in through there, and just round to round to that side. The door going upstairs is into a garage, which is very practical for Hobart.
Yes.
We get 4 seasons every hour here, don't we? So you can just leave your garage doors open and drive in and come in under cover.
Yeah, very practical.
Yeah.
And straight into the kitchen.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that was absolutely fascinating, Scott. So I know there's a lot more to see.
There is.
And there's a whole upstairs. When can people come and visit if they would like to come and visit?
Well, the best times are Saturdays over summer. So from the 1st of October through to the end of April, we're open every Saturday. People don't need to make a booking for that. They can just come between 10 and 4:30.
And just arrive.
Just arrive and tours. You've got to leave yourself an hour or so for this house.
Yes,
there's so much to see.
Especially in the garden, as you were saying, and it's such a lovely garden to look at. And I know that you've got some vegetables even growing further down.
Further down,
it's beautiful. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. That was really interesting. I learnt a lot about Markree, and I've been here a few times, but it was good to hear it from you. And thank you for a very interesting tour.
Thanks, Kate.
No worries. Before we finish, I'd just like to remind you to join us again next Wednesday at 12 o'clock for another mystery tour. And I would also like to acknowledge that this Facebook Live event from TMAG has been brought to you with the generous assistance of the Friends of the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery and Tas Networks. So thank you very much, and thank you to Veronica for filming us. Bye.
Bye-bye.